Hey, everybody, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Straight Jacket White Rabbit. My name's Adam, and as usual, I'll be your host. Tonight, we're going to get into one of my favorite UFO legends of lore, one of my favorite UFO incidents to ever take place. We're talking about a family whose farmhouse and residence were invaded by multiple creatures who ranged from 3.5 to 4 feet tall, claws for hands, large eyes. We're talking about the Hopkinsville UFO attack. Now, on the evening of August 21st in 1955 in southwest Kentucky, 5 adults and 7 children were assaulted or came under attack by a UFO. That's right. A man named Billy Ray Taylor, who was friends with the people of the home, the Sutton family. Him and his wife had come by for a visit. They were all hanging out at the house, enjoying a night off. And as Billy went to the well to go retrieve some water, he noticed a shape floating in the air, illuminated. Well, this craft looked like it started to decrease in altitude as it was possibly trying to land behind their cabin, their farmhouse. Now, Billy Ray came inside hysterical, burst into the house, and he's telling the men that there's something outside. You know, he was genuinely terrified, you guys. After seeing this, the father of the house, Mr. Sutton, decides to tell Billy Ray, he's like, look, Billy Ray, you show me what's going on. You take me out there. Let's look at what this is. So he takes Billy Ray back out towards the well. Now, as they go back towards the well, they go a little bit further back to where there is a small, I don't know how to describe it. We'll call it a ditch behind the tree line behind their house. And as they approach this little dugout area, they notice a bright light coming from this craft that is on the ground. But then they see movement, you guys. These creatures, which are said to be somewhere between 3.5 to 4 feet tall, begin to appear around the craft, coming towards the men. Mr. Sutton and Billy Ray are scared to death. They run at full speed back to the house, stumbling bad enough to actually receive injuries and cuts on themselves. They get in the house, they slam the door, they're screaming in a panic to get their guns out and get ready, that something's coming. Keep in mind, this is not something that they would have pulled on their own families. This is not a trick. There are little children present. There are their wives present. They're not doing this to spark panic. These men are genuinely terrified of what's going on outside of their residence. Billy Ray and Mr. Sutton go and grab several rifles and a shotgun from the house. They're in the house. They're literally peering out the windows and putting objects in front of the door space as cover. Now, while all of this is happening, you guys, these creatures are getting closer and closer to the house, and the women in the house are beginning to panic because they begin to hear strange sounds. Now, the sounds that they're reported to hear range from things pulling at the boards that were near the window to almost claw-like sounds scampering across their tin roof of their farmhouse. They hear noises that sound like some kind of language coming from these creatures that they don't understand. These creatures start coming at the doors and windows, and Billy Ray and Mr. Sutton unload. They start firing at every alien they can see. You hear Mr. Sutton yelling to Billy Ray at one point, over there in the large tree. Billy Ray turns, unloads both barrels of his shotgun, goes to reload. Mr. Sutton firing through the windows, firing through the screen door on their front door. Every time they fire, the creatures retreat for a moment, but then they're back again at a window, anywhere, a doorway, anywhere they can seem to glance into the house. They seem to be trying to get in. This family is literally unloading and reloading at these creatures, shot after shot. According to Billy Ray and Mr. Sutton, they believe that they hit multiple of these creatures. At one point, they realize that they're starting to run low on ammunition. So they make a plan. They get the family together and they say that they are going to fire off some shots in the next rounds whenever the aliens approach again. And they want everyone to go outside after they fire off a volley, get in the cars, and they are going to head about 7 miles down the 41 highway to a place called Hopkinsville, which is where the name of this incident gets its name from, is that city. They are not technically in Hopkinsville. They are just outside of it by about 7 miles. So, sure as shoot, these things come back to the doors and windows trying to peer through or get in. And the boys unleash another volley of bullets. This time, as soon as they're done firing and it seems that the intruders have backed up, the family bursts through the door out to the car. They're struggling to do basic things like opening their car doors, you guys. They get in the car, they start the car, and they haul all the way to the police station with the pedal to the metal. They are literally going as fast as their vehicles can carry them. They run into the police station at Hopkinsville, panicked. The children are screaming and crying. The women are all yelling and screaming with tears themselves rolling down their cheeks. The men are screaming about an invasion. As they're telling the police in Hopkinsville what's going on and all of the commotion that has happened in this gun battle that has happened between them and an alien species. After telling the police this, the police were concerned about a possible gun battle between local citizens. They think that this is nothing more than someone encroaching possibly on their land who was fired upon. So 4 city police officers, 5 state troopers, and 3 deputy sheriffs, along with 4 military police officers from the nearby United States Army of Fort Campbell, drove to the Sutton farmhouse, which, as I said, is located near the town of Kelly and the town of Hopkinsville in Christian County, Kentucky. This is southwest Kentucky. The police show up, and what a lot of people will say is they didn't find anything, which is not true. This is, once again, what I hate about the media, you guys. These stories get so convoluted by media. Oh, they found nothing. They found a lot, you guys. And let me explain this to you, okay? The official story is they didn't really find anything. They found some empty shells and they found some beer cans. That's what they said. Okay, so let's get into this. They show up, and keep in mind, for an incident that they believe, quote unquote, was just a dispute among neighbors or somebody possibly trespassing, first of all, why would you bring 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, 4 military police officers to this family farmhouse? Wouldn't the police have just been enough if it was a simple case of a trespasser? Certainly, the 4 city police officers, the 5 state troopers, and the deputy sheriff, 3 deputy sheriffs would have been enough. Why contact the military and have them bring out 4 military police as well? So they get to the property, and this is what they find, which people say is not evidence. They show up, you guys, and there are dozens of shell casings throughout the entire farmhouse property on the inside of the house. There are bullet holes through the screens. There's still parts of buckshot lodged in the windowsills and near the doorways. It is obvious that these people were shooting massive amounts of hardware, massive amounts of bullets through their house windows, doors, even occasionally through the walls by the door and window. There were scattered boxes of ammunition that had obviously been opened and gone through. Yes, there was a few beer cans there as well, which was literally reported as a few beer cans, nothing more. So people trying to use that as the excuse of, oh, these guys were intoxicated. The women weren't intoxicated at all. In fact, it had only been the two men, the two older men, drinking at the farmhouse that night. And they had only had, according to the household, 2 beers each, which it would be rational if all they say they found in the police report were a few beer cans scattered in the house. It wasn't anything crazy. They didn't report, dozens of beer cans scattered all over or anything like that. It was a few. So 4 seems reasonable according to the accounts of the family. So if it wasn't alcohol related, and it wasn't a normal trespasser according to the family, because number one, it wasn't one trespasser, it was multiple. The family's original report stated between 5 and 8 possible aliens. They're unsure. It could have been more. It could have been less. They do not have a positive number. Now, once again, with the BS that the media pulls, they later on in articles that were published afterwards say that it comes to 12 or 15 aliens. That's usually the most reported number, which is not based in any factual reality because that's not the number that was stated to the police originally. Now, there were a handful or more told to the police, and that's fine. But I mean, how are you going to double or triple that to 15? Also, the description of these beings were slightly exaggerated. They didn't say anything about claws. They said their hands had pointed nails on the end of their fingers. I guess you can call that a claw, but they never actually said the word claw, you guys. So the police show up. They see the bullets everywhere. They see, some people say, a few spots of greenish liquid. Now, this one doesn't make it to a lot of stories this point because it's actually a family member who was not even alive at the time who has told this detail to the press before, stating that her father was there and so was her grandmother, and this is what they saw. Now, whether or not the police saw this or not is up for debate because they never came out and admitted to seeing this. But they did also see the giant barren spot in the little dugout behind the tree line behind their house where this craft supposedly landed. A very perfectly circular spot in the grass that's just barren. So the police take a report and they wipe it off to either drinking or a hoax. And the fact that they worked, a few of them, mainly Billy and his wife, worked at the carnival, the police just ran with the fact that these people were trying to pull a hoax. Here's why I don't think that's likely, you guys, for a few reasons. Number one, this is in front of their little children. I mean, if you're going to pull a hoax, why not just tell people that this stuff happened? Why pull out the guns in front of your children and firing shots that could very well ricochet off? I mean, they were hitting the wood on the inside of the doors, just firing near these things out of fear. A ricochet is not an out of this world possibility. They could have hurt one of their own children. I don't think that any parent would be doing this if they didn't perceive a real threat coming into their home. Same thing with their wives. Why would the men were the two that came in screaming that they saw these things first? And yes, the women claim to have seen things trying to come into the house afterwards, so maybe they were in on it, people would say. But why would the husbands initially run in the house screaming, trying to scare these ladies? If they had someone working with them dressed up as people have said, there have been a few people who have said that maybe they got some people of smaller stature to dress up and try to scare the women. Once again, this doesn't ring true for me, you guys. If you're trying to scare your wife and you have some friends outside your house being creepy, you're not going to start shooting at them with multiple rifles. Okay, I'd be pissed if I was your friend and I'm helping try to pull a prank on your family and you start shooting live rounds at me. I would not be okay with this. I don't know anyone who would be. It's absurd. When these family members were still alive and you could hear them tell this story, It was really emotionally moving. You could tell that they were scared of this incident. And there's other things that back up the fact that these people were genuinely terrified of this encounter. So the police and the military scour the property and say they find nothing of any real import. They're saying, nothing to see here. These people were just shooting off things, and they leave. However, that's not the end of the story if you listen to what the family members of the Hopkinsville incident have to say. Because what they say is for nearly 2 hours of this assault on their house, it was 2 hours of this, you guys. They were literally fighting off these aliens for that long. And I don't know how well I would handle that kind of a stressful situation, number one. And number two, I don't think most people understand how long that must have felt like to them. When you're in a situation like that, man, a few minutes seem like forever. Can you imagine being out in the middle of nowhere in the 50s with nothing more than a few shotgun and rifles in your house, having to hold back some kind of alien invasion on your property for 2 solid hours before being able to escape to get to the police? That must have been so terrifying. But here's the thing, you guys, I want to get to again. This was not just this incident. They had other things going on. After the police left around midnight, 12:30ish, the family was so scared they didn't even want to stay in their house. They actually all congregated in the living room and slept pretty much back to back, taking shifts with rifles in hand so that people could get sleep in this house. But the family says the event wasn't ending there. No, they say this UFO returned at roughly 3:30 in the morning. They did not have an accurate time. This is a rough estimate, but roughly 3:30 in the morning, this craft returned. And this time it didn't land, but it hovered around, and it did come down to a low point, again, behind the trees, behind this house, behind this farmhouse, behind the tree line. So it could have possibly landed a second time. We're not sure. After this, the family's had it. The grandmother has absolutely had it, who is the property owner. So what happens is they literally drive away at, I believe it was 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, the next morning. They drive away from this house with their cars packed to the rafters, things tied down to the roof, tied in the trunk, tied on top of the trunk. I mean, filled with every possession they could get out of that house. And they went and stayed with family and friends for a few days while the grandmother went and got an apartment. An apartment, you guys. This woman up and abandoned her family home that had been in her family for generations. The very next week, got an apartment in Hopkinsville because she said that she felt safer being in the city as opposed to out in the country where this took place. Does that sound like the act of someone who's just trying to get some press? They literally sold their family home. They moved out of it the next morning. They took everything they owned out of this house and left. Sounds to me like they had a reason to leave in their own opinion, and I don't believe it was because they were drinking. Don't you think if you were drinking one night, you had a little too much, and you were, overactive imagination and some stuff, that you might have woke up the next day with a sober head and went, you know what? I was seeing things, or I was really drunk last night. No, these people stayed up all night scared to death that these entities were going to come back, and they did come back. Now, granted, they didn't do the full-scale invasion like they did the first time, but the vehicle came back. The UFO came back. This incident scared them so much, like I said, they sold their family home. They moved to a town they didn't want to actually live in because they felt safer being by that many more people, being closer to police, being close to other neighbors. Their stories never change, you guys. Not until after their death, not their family's reinterpretation of what they were told. They have family members who weren't even alive during the incident who were relayed this story, and the details have not changed. But the story's still not over. The next morning, one of their neighbors sees a car pulling up to the Sutton house. The neighbor pulls their car over and wants to go see what's going on with their neighbor. They had heard a lot of commotion as well during the night. So they show up, and out of the car gets these two men dressed in black suits, black hats, sunglasses. They're taking photos and other instrumentation readings. And they asked the neighbors, did you see anything or hear anything? The neighbors are like, no, we weren't here for it. After a few minutes of taking some photos and some other possible evidence, the men disappear. They get inside their car and they drive off. Now, nobody knows who these two men were. There's no official record of them being police or military. A lot of people believe that this was another case of the men in black showing up after a reported credible sighting. Now, some people say that because they were in the circus, that's why the idea of them perpetrating a hoax, I'll say, is so popularized. But I say that's no worse than saying because of someone's job now that they're lying. Just because someone had a certain type of a job doesn't make them a liar automatically. And when you, like I said, when you have the evidence that you have that something occurred, I'm a family man, you guys. I don't see a group of people, especially not back. This is 1955, you guys. I'm sorry, but for the most part, you don't have the morons we have nowadays, like flashing their guns on TikTok and shooting them into the air for no reason and stuff. A lot of that stuff did not happen. There was actually a lot more responsible gun ownership back then than there is now. So in 1955, when all this stuff went down, was this family of 5 adults and 7 children, you guys, was this a real instance of being invaded? Were these creatures trying to abduct one of them? Were they simply just curious? Now, we all know I don't trust the media at all. This is why I read every newspaper news source I can get my hands on, and even non-newspaper news sources, so that I get somewhat of a more complete view of all these stories that come out. Because media tends to exaggerate things. As I told you, they exaggerated the number of aliens all the way up to 12 or 15. They even exaggerated the description of the aliens, which is where you get the name the Hopkinsville Gremlins event. People called them gremlins because of the press released version of what these things look like. The original report said that they could have had greenish skin. It was hard to tell the color of their skin. But they did see that their bodies, their torsos, were covered in a metallic or silver gray material that they believed was some kind of suit. Their arms were long and spindly, these creatures. Even though these creatures were only 3.5, 4 feet tall, their arms almost dragged on the ground. Their arms were so long. Thin arms, thin leg, thin spindly legs. These were not huge creatures. They were not overly, terrifying with their presence. They were terrified of these creatures because, they were creatures. It's exactly that. It's not because they were some huge werewolf or Frankenstein monster that's over 6 feet tall. These were small creatures. But these men were so terrified that not only did they freak out their entire family, children and all, they freaked out their wives, they freaked out their children over this. And I just don't see this being the type of thing that people do, or at least not anyone with a sane mind, if they were trying to prank someone. I can understand a prank as saying you saw something and leaving it at that and acting scared. But to actually be so panicked that you're dropping bullets as you're trying to load the weapons and you're trying to, you know what I mean, explain to them what's going on outside while you're trying to load your weapons and get weapons for other people. And then you have one guy go into the back door to cover it, one guy going to the front door, and they're yelling out that they see things moving here or there. And then, like I said, the climbing across the tin roof. Those of you who've ever been in a building with a tin roof, by the way, it's very apparent when something is on your roof. It is very loud. But all of these things give this story an air of truth. So I'd really like to know what you guys think about this. Do you think the Hopkinsville gremlins, the Hopkinsville UFO story was a hoax? Or do you think these people saw something that was trying to come at them in their home? Do you believe that an entity somehow either landed or crashed there? Well, here's another thing that gets interesting about this case. Years later, you guys, years later, on his deathbed, a local military personnel officer told the granddaughter of the property owner that he had information that he wished to relay to her before his passing. He got a hold of her, and she came down to the hospital to listen to what he had to say. And what he told her absolutely shocked her. And when she told the rest of her family, shocked them as well. He told them that he not only knew that what happened to them was real, but the military had proof of it. Because apparently when this craft left for the second time that they showed up that night, after the police left and they showed up again, apparently after this craft left that time, it crashed not far from the farmhouse. According to this officer, the crash site was cleaned up by the military. They took the wreckage and the bodies to the local military base, where officers from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base reportedly showed up and confiscated all materials relating to the UFO and crash site. So the officer claims that not only did this craft exist, but it crashed and was recovered and was transferred to Wright-Patterson by Wright-Patterson employees, by their personnel, by the military personnel at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the same base that supposedly the Roswell wreckage and several other instances like the Kecksburg incident, UFOs, all were supposedly taken. So, what's your opinion on this story? You guys think it's real? Do you think they were just seeing things? Police say in their own report, the men were not drunk or did not appear to be intoxicated. So even the explanation of them drinking too heavily is kind of out the window. And what about the bald patch of grass out in back that mysteriously appeared? Ironically enough, about a 15-foot section in the back of that gully was dug up at some point within a week after this incident. So there was nothing for anyone to go back to investigate. Something had been removed from the site and was dug up in that very spot. Guys, this is actually a fairly common practice when UFO crashes are retrieved. A lot of people don't know this about Roswell, you guys. They actually had people out there burning parts of the field where the debris was, as to not miss anything in the tall weeds and the tall grass. A lot of them, people say that when UFOs lands, the marks they left are often either mowed over, dug up, or had something done to them to where they can't be tested for things. Now, what they would test for, I don't know. It could be radioactivity. It could be a lot of things, you guys. There's a lot of different physical phenomena that come with these craft. But what I'm saying here is this attack on actual people by extraterrestrials is got to be one of the most undertold stories, in my opinion, in UFO lore. I mean, Roswell's great, and the secondary crash to Roswell's even better because most people don't even know about the second crash at Roswell that happened at the same time, basically, as the first one. But this story is great for a whole new reason, because this is not just a craft that crashed. This is not just a craft with dead bodies. This is a craft that landed that seemingly tried to invade a farmhouse, that were fought off, that returned later, and that crashed ultimately in the end. Some people say that the crash may have actually been caused by the fact that the Suttons had injured the pilots. Remember, multiple of these entities were reportedly shot. But when the police turned up, they didn't find any bodies. Maybe it's because they weren't dead. Maybe it's because they were just simply injured. Anyways, I wanted to bring this story to you guys because I get really worked up about it. I really love the intensity of this one. I mean, like I said, these people were so terrified, they didn't even care about scaring their own family members. Can you imagine being one of 7 children just all huddled around in the living room having a nice family night when this gunfire and screaming and panic and utter terror all of a sudden just unfolds around you? I mean, talk about trauma that lasted a lifetime. These kids were quite literally traumatized from this event. Like I said, if the story is not true and it was just a prank, how do you explain the family moving out the next morning? How do you explain a woman whose family has owned that property for generations up and selling it within a week and moving to a city? She's not a city person. She had never lived in a city before. She was born and raised on that farmhouse property. The Sutton family was raised on that property. But they sold it pretty much immediately. And they moved immediately. They didn't even want to have to come back for things, you guys. Like I said, they loaded everything into their vehicles and left. Not to come back. Their grandchildren who heard stories of this growing up, you guys, were telling press openly. My family members stated outright they would never go back to that property, not even to their last days. They would not go back. I believe something scared the Sutton family, and I absolutely believe that something scared Billy Ray Taylor and his wife. What it is, we can only speculate. But I honestly believe that this was an honest-to-goodness alien close encounter. Whether they were trying to abduct the family, like I said, whether they were just curious, I don't know. But I wholeheartedly believe that the claims by Elmer Sutton, Billy Ray Taylor, and the other family members that were present, I believe that their stories were true. So, you guys, this has been Straight Jacket White Rabbit, bringing you another interesting story of the paranormal and the UFOs of the world. I just want to give a quick shout out to all my members. I love and appreciate all of you. My subscribers as well. You guys, without you, my channel wouldn't exist. You guys are all amazing. So if you're in here and you're not a subscriber, if you liked what you heard, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my newest videos as they come out. Huge thanks to my brother who's been helping me out here and there on my channel. He's been my #1 support for this channel. Huge thanks to you, bro. And I just want to say I love you all, and I hope you all have a great rest of your night.